I would say like Hyperbloom and like Hyperbloom in general has been a team that I like. It's probably, in my opinion, just the overall best team in the game. Like basically because it's so not burst reliant, right? The only character that really needs these bursts is Shinchu, and you can play like variants that don't even need Shinchu, right? Like you can play with Ayato or Child. Child has a bit like one cooldown, but you can make it work, and Ayato is pretty good, right? So you can, like, without Shinchu, like, there's basically nobody that needs the burst. And even Shinchu, like, if you have a sack, or a Fab Sword, right? Like, I have a Fab Sword here, and I haven't had any trouble. Like, even if he's empty, like, I'm pretty sure with its only Fab Lance proc, and then with Enter Shinchu, like, Fab proc on his sword, like, basically, I can always get his energy back, right? I do have C6 with 200 DR, which is technically overkill, but I like it just to be safe, right? Like, I really don't want it in a position where, like, I don't have enough energy for his burst, and then I just have to, like, scuff an entire rotation, right? That's something that I want to avoid. So I'm willing to play it conservative and get more ER than I need than to be stuck in a situation like that. Right, so when, yeah, I was talking about how Hyperbloom is, like, the best team, in my opinion. Yeah, so, like, because Nahida, like, she's E-based, right? Her Q is just buffs. Kuki is definitely E-based. Normally, yeah, I would play with Jingling. If you're playing with, like, another flex character that uses their burst, then it could, like, be burst-based, but if he's Jingling, then, like, he's probably the ultimate comp pick, in my opinion, right? Like, he basically, I mean, his shield is so strong you're never gonna get hit, right? And you're still doing more than enough damage with Hyperbloom, because Hyperbloom is just so fucking strong, right? Like, you have Nahida, you have an electric character, and you have, well, Kuki or Raiden. Most of the time, right? Kuki's probably even comfier than Raiden. But Raiden does have, like, higher damage potential because she does, she applies more electro, well, it's not really like applying electro, but like her electro ticks are more in line with Hyperbloom, right? Because like Kuki only applies, like, well, yeah, like I said, it's not applying electro because you don't actually worry about ICD, but rather the electro tick rate, right? Like she ticks like once every 1.5 seconds, and Raiden does it 0.9, right? And that makes Raiden a bit better for that situation. Yeah, like the DPS, even with just 3 characters, I think it's around like 70,000 on GC Sim. I mean, like obviously GC Sim isn't completely accurate, but the thing about like GC Sim is that I think it's more accurate than a lot of people think it is, right? Like a lot of people like instantly, they're like, oh, GC Sim spreadsheet impact sucks, like unreliable, but like if you think about it, what's the alternative, right? There's not really that many like controlled experimental, like if you think about like the scientific method, right, you need to control a lot of variables, keep them constant, so you only have like the only things that are being measured are like the dependent variable and like the independent variable, right? That's like the basis of all scientific like experimentation, but and like that's something that also needs to be translated into like Genshin, right? Because their crafting is kind of like a science, right? So you need to basically keep everything constant, right? You need to keep investment constant. You need to keep like constellations, talents constant, and you need to keep like how the experiment is run constant, right? Well, the scenario. And that's something that GC Sim does very well, right? Like everything's on KQM standards. Like everything's on KQM standards. Like they have a certain amount of roles that they can distribute. It's not perfect, but it's still, like I said, I think it's a lot better than a lot of people think it is, right? And that way, that you can compare teams that follow that same standard, right? They have artifact standards, weapon standards, like C6 4 stars, C0 5 stars, things like that.
The criteria for certificate exams are straightforward enough.
Shut up. And that makes the site, like the DPS comparisons, a lot better than a lot of people think they are. because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, anecdotally, right? Anecdotal evidence, where like my Raiden does such and such damage, like my Raiden destroys everything. But like, that doesn't just tell you anything, right? What you need to do is control how much investment your Raiden has. Like, you need to basically find that. Basically need to compare Raiden to other characters with similar levels of investment, and that's not something a lot of people do, right? They compare Raiden with, I don't know, like, what's a good example? Not sure. Well, like, I think a lot of people. There's another thing about Raiden, right? I don't really want to get into it because it's kind of off topic, but like, I think Raiden's a lot easier to get max potential out of because she's a lot easier to play, right? Compared to like, well, a good example is like Child, right? Because I think Child is like a lot similar, more similar to Raiden than a lot of people think. Like he is, right? Like they're both Bennett dependent carries, and like they both use Kazuha very well. Child can use Sucrose, right? Raiden, well, you can use Sucrose, but Child like is almost as good with Sucrose on paper as he is with Kazuha. Whereas Raiden, not so much. Right? And obviously you can use Xiangling with both of them, but like Raiden does have more Xiangling, like Xiangling-less teams than Child. But like Xiangling really isn't like a meta-defining character in the way that Bennett or like Fischl or Shinchu are, right? It's a story for another day. Is there anything else? I've been rambling. Right, yeah, I was talking about Hyperbloom and like GC Sim and everything, right? I think a lot of it is very much like over optimized. Like, I think the one with Fischl is getting like, yeah, Raiden, Xingqiu, Fischl, Nahida is like 90 something thousand. I don't think anyone is getting that in reality because it requires like pretty much pitch perfect play. Like if you look at the, if you look at like the script for that specific entry, it has a very specific, like, way too dank rotation. It's just not something that I think most people can actually do in practice, right? Like, and that's something to keep in mind, right? But it's not like you can dismiss it entirely. Like, it might not be 90,000, it's still really strong. Like, that shows that team is, like, that it still shows how strong Hyperbloom is, right? Like, Hyperbloom is not weak. And it's also, like, I mean, the results sort of speak for themselves, right? Before I had Hyperbloom, I actually, like, I actually sometimes struggled to find a second team, right? I would always run either international. Well, I always ran international, right? I didn't start playing Raiden until kind of really recently because I was just trying her out. I still like international more. Like, my clear times are usually better with international than with Raiden teams, because partially because my Raiden isn't that great, right? You might be like, the turret ratio is fine using Jade Spear, so it's worse than you might think, right? What is this? This is like 86, 111, 197 crit value. Yeah, it's about 197, which it's like close to 200. It's below KQM standards, I think, right? Because like I have a pretty decent amount of attack percent rolls, I suppose. I don't have any ER. I have this ER on here, but that's basically it. I do have quite a bit of attack, which is nice. But like my artifacts, they're okay. They're not great. Like on Akasha, I think it's like Mimida.ovh. It's like top 50%, something like that. I mean, which is kind of like, I was kind of shocked when I saw that, because like a lot of my other characters, like my Hu Tao is in like the top 10% or something, and I don't think my Hu Tao, like, it's okay, but I didn't think it was that great, right? But my my Raiden apparently is so bad that it's top 50%. I think it's because Raiden is so much more competitive than like any other character. For some reason, like, all the whales decide to like showcase their Raidens. Yeah. Yeah, another good thing about Hyperbloom was that, like, it basically has no, like, you don't really need to level anyone's talents, right? Like, Nahida does, like, okay personal damage. It's not enough that you need to worry about like leveling it to like 9 or 10, right? It's not like Hu Tao or Raiden, right, where like leveling this to 10 is a huge like damage increase over like even 8 or 9, right? Like each level is really significant. Whereas with like Nahida, that isn't really the case because the team damage is so diluted that the increase in team DPS is not that high with leveling like this or this, right? And you definitely want to level this more than this. Hopefully it says that, yeah. Yeah, some of these are actually off topic again, but some of these are actually like wrong, right? Like, let's see, this is right. Let's see, this one, is this right? No. Yeah, you should definitely level up this before this. Because, yeah, this is like additive to your attack, whereas this is like a separate multiplier. This ends up increasing your overall team DPS by a lot more than leveling this one. What was I saying again? Yeah, I was talking about like how this was not talent dependent, right? Like for Kuki, like you don't really need to level this, right? You get more healing, it's okay. For Xingqiu, it is kind of important, I suppose. It's still not like terribly important. Like he's doing, I think it's about, I could pull it up, but I'm kind of too lazy. I think it's about like somewhere around 10 to 15% of the team's damage is Xingqiu, so it's okay. It's not great. So like if this increases your damage by 15%, like on Xingqiu, then it'd be 15% of 15%, right? Which is 2.25%, right? If my math is right. And so like, is that worth it? Like, if you're late game, then maybe, but it's not like something that you need to do, right? And then for Kazuha, or well, I was doing it, you don't need to do that. I was this is back in the day. I don't recommend you crowning only. I barely even use this verse. Like, it's basically, I mean, people say it's a DPS loss. It kind of is, right? Like, unless you're doing a specific team that has forced downtime where you have the time to do its only burst, right? It's basically never worth it, right? In my build now, like, it's not even maximizing his burst, right? I'm running a, Archaic Petra, like triple HP, well, crit rate, HP, right? Crit rate for the Fab Lance, which is probably his best weapon, right?